This week we're going to look at two people versus the world. As Esther and Keith versus the world. Now you're thinking, white fro.
I'm thinking hipster potential.
That was
Bob
the original hipster.
He was a hipster before everyone else was a hipster.
Yeah. And that's Esther from the Bible. So we're going to look at two people. The two people are
Bob Ross.
Esther from the Bible and Bob Ross's brother, Keith Green.
That's actually a fact. He has the low V-neck and the
And the chest hair.
He just needs a beanie and some glasses.
He actually had those. I've got other pictures I could show you. No. He did have glasses though. So we're going to talk about them and how they impact the world. I put verses because it's sort of like, it's not like we're a bunch of, like a gang, but we are a tribe. And we need to impact this world. So in essence, it's us and how God wants to use us to impact the world. So verses, it was the only word I can think of right off the bat, so I'm open to suggestions on those ones. But let's go to the next slide. Okay, so I'll go ahead and read this one. At that moment, there was a Jewish man in the fortress of Susa, whose name was Mordecai, son of Jair. He was from the tribe of Benjamin, and was a descendant of Kish and Shimei. His family had been among those who with King Jehoiakim of Judah had been exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar. This man was a very beautiful and lovely, that is not right. He was gorgeous. So continuing, this man had a very beautiful and lovely young cousin, Hadassah, who was also called Esther. When her father and mother died, Mordecai adopted her into his family and raised her as his own daughter. And that was actually, this story takes place in 475 before Christ. So BC. And that is just crazy to think about. Like, we were like all born in the 90s and 80s. And
this was during the Persian Empire, wasn't it?
It was during the Persian Empire. And so we'll get into that. So, okay, so now I'm going to open up the discussion. What qualities or characteristics make someone ordinary? And just feel free to shout
They
them
are
out.
not Paris Hilton.
That is a fact. They are not rich, and they do not come from new money.
Everybody poops. They do not have street.
That is also another one. Definitely something ordinary.
They're not perfect.
They're not perfect. That's a great ordinary. Yeah, sure. Anything else? So I kind of thought about a little list of what makes someone ordinary. They work at your local McDonald's. They work at your local Starbucks. Although an amazing barista, they also only work at Starbucks. Some people may say their job impacts, and Starbucks gets me through the day, so I'm going to say they impacts me, but typically, they're pretty ordinary. They get paid, usually about minimum wage, if not a little bit more, so I would say it's pretty ordinary. Another thing is, I would say people that you work with at your job. Even the owners, they're pretty ordinary. Some are out there ordinary, but they're ordinary. So with a show of hands, how many of you would say that you are ordinary? I think I'm pretty ordinary.
Lucy's not raising her
Well,
paw.
in like just a general sense.
In a general sense, yeah.
I suppose.
Ordinary. So the story of Esther is such an interesting story. It's interesting because the girl's parents died. There was a guy at this time, King Xerxes. He was actually the first King Xerxes, not the one from 300. It was actually 3 Xerxes later. But if you want to picture him like that, feel free. because that's the way I like to picture Xerxes in my head.
Oh.
There's
There's a drag queen in that movie.
actually does.
With a really deep voice.
Yeah. So, and he's like 7 feet tall or something. He's ridiculous. So, King Xerxes controlled 127 provinces. It stretched from India to Africa. I mean, if you just think about that, this one bro controlled all of that land. There was about 127 provinces.
All the pugs.
They were little pugs back then.
They're all in
No, I'm just
check.
joking. He created the pugs. He had 2 royal pugs that sat next to him when he was beheading people and spearing
I'm
them
gonna
to
go
death.
lick up the pug.
But so King Xerxes' wife was kind of a broad chat, and she was like, you know what? I'm not really going to listen to the king, so she basically doesn't adhere to what he says. So king has her killed, or no, exiled. Sorry. And then so kicks her to the curb, and then he's like, hey, servant guys, I want you to go out and I want you to find me the hottest chicks in all my area. So he goes out. All his peeps go out, and they come upon Esther. Esther goes back, and as Esther, his eunuchs see Esther, Mordecai tells Esther not to tell him that
He
she's
marries her.
Jewish. So she doesn't tell him that she's Jewish, and he goes back and is presented in front of him. This is funny. It's a really interesting tradition. They actually were bathed like in a spa for 12 months, and then they got presented to the king. So then they get presented to the king, and he falls in love with her. And again, she doesn't tell him what her heritage is. So then they get married, and she becomes Queen Esther at that point. Then he was dominating. He controlled over the Jews at the time. So when Mordecai told her to hide her heritage, it was so that way, right?
So that he wouldn't kill her. He wouldn't.
Yeah, discriminate against her.
She wouldn't be harmed, basically.
Yeah. So King Xerxes was like, who is this chick? You know, I mean, fell in love with her and became queen. So of course Mordecai goes with her. And so Mordecai one day hears of 2 guys that are plotting against King Xerxes. And so Mordecai goes to Esther and tells Esther, and then Esther goes to King Xerxes, and Xerxes like, oh my gosh. And then she goes, yeah, it was Mordecai who heard him. And he goes, thank you so much. And then they go about their business. So later, King Xerxes' right-hand man, Haman, who got mad at Mordecai because Mordecai was Jewish and of course didn't want to bow down to Xerxes, that made Haman mad. And so he got so mad that he went to King Xerxes, was like, there is a group of people who are out to like not obey your laws. They set themselves different from you. I want to kill them. And King Xerxes is like, okay, cool, here's my ring. Here you can, it's a seal. You have all approval. And then he creates it. March 7th, every Jew was to be annihilated. Every mother, every child, every father, every boy, completely annihilated in one day. So Mordecai, hearing about this, was distraught. And so Queen Esther heard about this, was distraught because her uncle is sitting at the gate, not eating. He tore all of his clothes, put sackcloth on, and tore that too, I'm sure. He's just a mess. She wrote Mordecai, and they were talking. And Mordecai was saying, hey, you should go to the king. And so she was like, I mean, can you imagine that? Going to your king to beg for your own race, but you've been hiding your heritage the whole time. So anyways, so the letter basically said this. In Mordecai's part of his letter to Queen Esther, he was like, who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just a time as this. And so we see the story unfolding now. Haman is going to kill every Jew. And of course, that's God's people. And now Esther has an opportunity to go to the king to beg, not to basically take back the decree against the Jews. But you see, the king, dude, could you imagine being a ruler and a king like that? I mean, so much responsibility and so much pressure. He's probably like massively angry all the time, and most kings were very well known. If you caught him in a bad mood, they have you killed. So he had this sort of some say garden, some say inner court, but he sat on this throne that faced the gate and the entrance, and as people came in, he had the staff, and if he was in a bad mood, and as you walk closer, and if he didn't lower that staff, you would be instantly killed. And so imagine Esther in that situation. Esther goes, oh gosh, I gotta go in front of him. If he's in a bad mood, he'll have me killed. But she builds the courage, and she builds the strength, and she goes there. And the king is actually happy to see her. And they talk for a little bit, and then the king goes, basically he starts going, whatever you want, baby, I'll give it to you. If you want half my kingdom, it's yours. And then she goes, just come to a banquet and invite Harmon. And so they said, okay, cool. They go to the banquet. She doesn't say anything on that one, because I'm sure she's nervous. I mean, could you imagine trying to bring up something as sensitive as that? The fact that the decree's already gone out, she could be killed instantly right there. So anyways, so they go to the second banquet, and right before the second banquet, Harmon goes off, and he was like boasting to his buddies. He's like, and his wife is like, just chilling with King Xerxes today, that the Queen Esther put for us, just me and him. We should make a 75-foot spike pole and throw him on it. Now 75 feet, that's like, dude, that's like 7.5 stories. And they're gonna throw one guy on top of it. I mean, that's like the worst kebab ever. It's like, so Harmon, of course, being the evil dude he is, goes, yeah, let's do that. So they actually construct this pole, and what he's going to do is he's going to go and ask permission from King Xerxes, because he doesn't want to kill him. So anyways, so King Xerxes has a horrible dream, asks one of his servants to read him, okay, now this is where he gets really conceited, read me the history book of my life. So you imagine this book, everything's been written down.
I want one of my life.
Yeah, he's got like this purple blanket. He's got his 2 pugs sitting there. He's all snuggled up, and this guy in fear is reading the amazing conquerors and stuff. But the funny thing is that as he's reading it, he gets into the story of when Mordecai saved him by alerting King Xerxes about the 2 guys who were plotting to kill him. And he goes, what did we do for that bro? What did we do for Mordecai? And he goes, we didn't do anything. So then he goes, wait, what is that in the inner courtyard? What's going on? He's, oh, it's Harmon. He's coming here to see you. He's like, oh, invite him here. So Harmon comes in here, and they're talking, and he's like, Harmon. He's like, what should I do for a guy who served me so well? And Harmon's like, talking to me. It's about me. So you should ride him in on a horse and put some purple linen on him, make him be all legit, and walk him around the courtyard singing praise to him. He goes, that's pretty good. Let it be done. Go get Mordecai. And so this is where it gets funny. He goes out, gets Mordecai, puts him on a horse, covers him in robes, and walks around the courtyard going, this is Mordecai, friend of Xerxes, and this is Harmon, who just went to Xerxes to ask permission to throw him on top of this 75-foot spiky pole. So now, this was the night before the other banquet. So now, they go to the second banquet. And so it's just the queen, the king, and Harmon. And they're sitting at the second banquet. And the king's sitting there, you could picture Harmon kind of sluggishly in the back, like I love you. I can't believe I'm in your presence, but I'm still fearful. And the queen just like lounging right next to the king on this like, they called them couches back then, but they really weren't couches. They were more like really long bean bags. Anyways, and so they had this couch, and she was sitting on it, and she looks up at Xerxes and goes, I gotta talk to you about something. He's like, oh, just name it, whatever you want, I'll give you half my kingdom. He goes, no. She goes, what if I were to tell you that someone was gonna kill all my people, and that included me? And so from that, he gets just outraged. He's like, they would come here now and kill you in front of me? I mean, this is the most powerful man in the world, so that person's got to have some guts to be able to do that. So that he's talking, who is this man? He goes, it's Haman. This guy is evil and vicious, and he's planned to killing all the Jews, and I am Jewish, and that includes me. And then another guy comes up and goes, hey, he just built a spike to kill Mordecai. He goes, fine, throw Haman on that spike. And so that was the end of Haman. As I was planning this, because as we unveil the story, we get to really see how God's unfolding the plan. I mean, here she was, this ordinary person, and God unfolded these plans that made her queen. But as I was planning this out, I realized that the story, although focused on Esther and called the book of Esther, or just Esther, it's actually funny because we don't really look at Mordecai. Mordecai was just as ordinary as she was. He was just an uncle who took in a girl who just happened to be, put in the king's path so the king would fall in love and make her queen. And then he was sort of kind of in the mix in the kingdom. But after this happened, and Haman died, King Xerxes ended up raising up Mordecai and making him second in command. So that means there was King Xerxes, and then there was Mordecai. And Mordecai had the authority in the ring. They had a ring that had a seal on it. He had that. And so it's just interesting that in one story you have two ordinary people in two different circumstances. And that sort of brings me to Keith Green. I don't know a lot about you, if you guys know who Keith Green is, but he's a really rad guy. He was born in the 50s. He accepted Christ about 19, 20 years old. He got his first record contract when he was 12. He was on Johnny Carson, super well known. As a matter of fact, when he started off, they said his major competition was Elton John. So it was going to be between him and Elton John, and that was his thing. But for some reason, he kind of just fell off the face of the earth with media. Nobody wanted to continue with him. And I think God allowed that for a reason. He ran away from home, not saying that you guys should, but he ran away from home, went to San Francisco to seek out basically the free love and mystical movement. And in fact, he actually played music with Charlie Manson. And so Keith traveled all across California doing drugs and seeking. And one day he had a bad LSD trip, and he said he saw demons, and it was just a horrible experience for him that he stopped doing drugs and he started seeking more philosophy, more theology, because that trip had scared him so bad. He met Melody, and they were inseparable for about a year, and he used to call her his seeking buddy. But they would seek each other. They would seek different, like, the right way, the way to get to heaven, the meaning of life. That was their seeking. And then one day, Keith said God's love just broke through, and actually he wrote a song about it. It's a really popular song. But God's love just broke through to him, and he accepted Christ. And then, and at that point, he just got married to Melody, and it was intriguing because when you're seeking and trying to find something, you don't expect it to hit you. And he was only seeking for about a year and a half. But it's funny because he was actually doing something. He was seeking. And I think that at some point in our lives, we come to a point before we accept Christ that we seek. And it's when you accept Christ is when you're done seeking. in that sense of trying to find heaven and purpose and stuff, of where you go when you die. But I think that we all will end up seeking God's will and plan for our lives. So we still seek. But anyways, well, God was opening some awesome doors for Keith Green to play, and he played in a club. I want to say it was the Blah Blah. I think it was the Blah Blah Club. And so as he's a regular there, and he's playing music, and everyone loves his music because it's all about seeking what's out there, what's the purpose. And then he accepts Christ, and he starts playing these songs about God and Jesus, and people are like, whoa, 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 what are you doing? We're seekers here. And the minute Keith Green offers an answer, they're like, whoa, 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 we want to seek. We don't want this. And so through that time, he still plays, and they move his hours around. He plays later at night, or is it earlier in the night, and people start recognizing him and start recognizing his love for God. Anyways, so Keith and them start taking people in from the streets. They start taking in like addicts and prostitutes and homeless people into their house to live. And they went from their one house, and they grew so much, and people were chipping in financially, that they ended up buying the whole block. And so they had all these houses on this one, basically, street. And it was pretty amazing that God was opening the door. So they ended up moving to Texas, just because they needed more land. They wanted to buy land. And I don't know why Texas. I know that, I mean, everybody should know I hate Texas. But I like to say that God made Texas to remind people what hell's going to be like.
This view of Texas is in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, so I like to stick to that my saying there. But so anyways, well, we can see what God's been doing through Keith. He would have had massive popularity and everything else, but that didn't work out. He became ordinary at that point. He lived his life as an ordinary person, seeking and trying to find something, and then God slowly started opening doors for him to do it, even using the drugs he was taking to get him to stop doing those drugs and then keep searching philosophy and theology until he finally found Jesus. And then we see God using him in ministry, just loving people and welcoming them in. And the whole time he's still playing music. So Keith put Christian contemporary on the map. He made it well known. And he wrote some modern day hymns that everybody sings. He's also helped other ministries such as Mercy Ships. Basically, they buy a huge cargo ship, they turn it into a hospital, and they go from port to port helping people. He's the one that actually gave them the money to buy their first ship. He's given pools, and I think in Scotland, he went to this missionary's house and there was a big pool up back, there's no water in it. And he says because it's broken and stuff, he's like, that's fine. You have enough money, and they built the pool. So they have a pool in Scotland now. I think they had water back then, so I don't know. Scotland, there's no water. Landlocked.
Wait, a pool?
A pool, like a pool pool.
A swimming
Like a
pool.
swimming
Like
pool. Like an outdoor pool.
In Scotland.
In Scotland.
It rains all the
It
time.
rains.
though.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't
We
know.
don't
Dude,
do-
But I remember it was at some castle.
I lived in Ireland. I would have appreciated a pool. Pool would
Yeah,
have been cool.
say maybe it could have been Ireland, but I want to say it was
Might not
Scotland.
be there.
Because I remember a castle, but Ireland has castles too.
Yeah, they've all got castles.
You guys don't have castles.
No,
you guys
they
have
do.
cottages, right?
No, we do. We've got castles.
Made of
Everybody has castles.
Haggis.
Everyone has
Everybody
castles.
castles made of haggis.
Oh, yeah, I think
Where's
I
that
read
Scottish
that
too?
online.
That's Scottish.
So Scottish. Okay.
So,
So-
I've never been.
So Keith totally helped us out, and not only that, but he's also, of course, because of his influence, he formed Brittany and Mai's heart. So, which again is the God's following to start this youth group. So you can see God's progression and how Keith Green has influenced us. Keith Green died in 1982, and he's still making a huge impact for these ministries, YWAM, Mercy Ships, our youth group, and the hearts of people that hear his music. And a lot of artists, a lot of musical artists, still rewrite his music.
I think he was only 28 when he died,
He's
right?
28, yeah.
Wow.
So for the 7 years that he had a chance to do ministry, was phenomenal. But so God takes ordinary people like you and I, and we can do some extraordinary things because of him. But it takes with our relationship to start first with God. And then once we get our relationship right with God first, we accept Him in our heart, then we make the decision to follow Him. We make the decision to stand apart from this world. That means not following the trends and the sort of acceptable stuff that this world tells us we can do. And we follow Christ, what the Bible says, the way Jesus lived. We become Christ followers. And that's a hard thing to do. But once we do, as the two people we've studied tonight, we can see that God will take us from ordinary people to extraordinary people.